everyone, I'm Allie Buchman with the Potomac Bead Company, and I am going to do a sweet little pendant for you today called the Winter Flower Pendant. The Winter Flower Pendant you could put on a chain, you could add some more beads, do a chain of the Arcos beads if you wanted to do that as well. But the Winter Flower is going to be based on a pendant, and then if you would want to, you can actually make it earrings because it's really not that large. It's about the size of a $50 around in shape. For the winter flower, if you need any of the materials on the left-hand side here, if you are not on a mobile, we'll do a little drop down here and you can click on those links to purchase online. Or if you are on a mobile, or anyone else can go to the details section underneath the video that has the little description and the show more under there. There's a little arrow. Click on that and it'll give you links to purchase the products if you need to get some of these awesome beads. So I'm using the Arcos beads to do these. If you haven't used the Arcos beads at all yet, they are a 3-hold arch-shaped bead, and we're going to be using 2 different colors. For the example here, I use the metallic blue, and I use the the crystal Labrador Fool, that silver color. For the 2 colors, you want to use 6 beads of each. For my example that I'll be doing with you, I'm going to use the white champagne and then that white mint luster. In addition to 6 and 6 Arcos, 12 altogether, 6 of each, you're also going to be using some teardrop beads. You only need a couple, but they do make a big impact on the pendant. I'm using the Miyuki 3x4mm drops, and the color here is the eggplant color. I'm going to be using the white red luster, which is a check coating on the Miyuki product. In addition to those, we have some 15-0 seed beads, and the 15-0s that I have here were that blue iris color, and I'm going to be using the Galvanized champagne for the 15-0 on our example. The whole thing will be strung on some white wildfire thread in 0.006, and we'll be looking for 1 size 12 needle on your thread. Also to have handy is a cord cutter or a thread burner. I have the wildfire cord cutter here. I like the thread burner. You also want a nice workable surface when I'm moving from one location to the other and working. I like to work on my bead on it boards. Here I just have the white filming surface that I use, which is basically the surface almost of a bead on it board that you can work with as well. Another good thing to have handy are some pliers to flatten out your thread if you do like to use a thread burner. In the middle here, you could also use some crystals. If you wanted to use some 4mm crystals, you could do that as well if you didn't want that little flower middle to this winter flower pendant. To get started, we are going to get ready by adding a stop bead onto about 3 feet of beading thread and get out your 6 groupings or your 2 groupings of 6 of your Arcos beads. So again, to get started, I have my needle on my thread, and I'm going to leave about an inch tail, and I have on a stop bead. This is an 11-0 seed bead that I had sitting here that is going to eventually come off the project. Go through that stop bead 2 times away from that 1.5 inches of thread and pull it through your needle. Once you have that stop bead on, we're going to get ready to do, and I'm going to flip this over, the center of the pendant. To do the center of the pendant, it's kind of a pinwheel look to it. I'm going to do the champagne color. To start out, I'm going to put on all of my Arcos beads, going the same direction so that they're all facing in towards one another. All 6 are going to go on. And again, you want to make sure that they're facing one another. So they're all sitting together. Let those all drop down next to your stop bead. And then we're going to create that arch kind of pinwheel effect by taking my threaded needle, going back through the first 2 Arcos through the same holes, and I'm just going to pull the stop bead out of the way a tiny bit. When I give a nice tight yank then, it's going to create that little pinwheel effect. I moved the stop bead out of the way so it doesn't get stuck in the middle. To add my next row of beads, I'm going to take a step up. If you are familiar with kind of stepping up and doing peyote stitch or anything like that, to step up, I'm coming out the bottom hole closest to the intersection here. I'm going to go through the middle hole. What that's going to do is also reverse the direction the thread's going If I give a nice tight pull, it's going to tighten that up a little bit. When I'm coming out of the center here of my Arcos bead, I'm going to add my mint color Arcos. These Arcos will sit in between the Arcos before them, going in the opposite direction, so it'll be almost hugging it. To make it sit nicely though, before each Arcos and adding them, I'm going to add a 15-0, sew through that bottom hole of the Arcos in the opposite direction, and then through the middle hole of the Arcos that's already on the project. Give a tight pull and pull the Arcos into place. The next one, same thing, 15-0 goes on, and you're going to add your Arcos facing down through that first hole and go through the open middle hole of the next champagne luster one. Again, 15-0. Face the Arcos if you need to. Pick it up and go through the middle hole of the next Arcos bead. So we're going through the outer hole of the one that we're adding, and then the inner hole of the one that we're going around, that champagne that was already there. Again, the reason I'm adding the 15-0 is for design element. It looks nice in there, but also so we don't see a lot of extra thread showing. Go through and you're going to add in your 5th and then your 6th. It's not going to make a difference also if you have the seed bead before or after the Arcos, so just a little side note there. As I add in my final 6th mint colored Arcos, I'm going to go through that champagne luster Arcos. I'm going to go through the galvanized champagne and through that first hole of that mint Arcos that we put on initially. Give a nice tight pull, and that's going to get the base here of our design. The base of the design, if you want to, you can continue expanding and actually make a little bit bigger and make the pendant a little bit wider. That's up to you. You can see that the back here of the stop bead is kind of heading and hanging out in the back. You want to keep that to the back, and you will see a tiny bit of thread on the inner row here. When you see the thread on the inner row, you won't see it as we add in our seed beads, but you can see you do see a little bit here on the outside. To progress and add in our teardrops, we're going to do another step up. We're going from the first hole of that mint Arcos to the second hole of the mint Arcos. When I'm coming out the second hole of the Arcos, I'm going to add one of my teardrops and sew through the third hole of the champagne Arcos. Because of the natural way that it fits, that teardrop is going to face upward. On the outer edge here, add 2 15-0s and sew into the middle hole of that next mint Arcos. Add another teardrop, basically going around in a circle. 2 more 15s go on and through the center hole. You're just going to keep going around in a circle, adding in a teardrop between the center of the mint Arcos and the champagne, and then when you're coming out the champagne to go into the center of the next Arcos, just 2 seed beads get added. And go the whole way around in a circle. As you're going around in a circle, you'll end up adding in 6 of the teardrops, naturally because you have 6 of the Arcos grouping. And you can really change the design colors of this. You could do it all in red with some little green that it could look like a poinsettia, or you could do it all in green and then do little reds that it would look like a berry for a wreath. So something holiday-wise as well. You could change it to yellow and it'll have more of a sunflowerish look. But I thought here it looked more like a winter flower, one of those kind of spiky flowers. As I get around then, I will add in my last teardrop. And then with the teardrops, if you ever see a teardrop that has like a really skinny bottom, just push that one off to the side because you want to make sure that your teardrops are all matching. I'm going to go through that last hole of the Arcos bead here and add my 2 15-0 seed beads. So putting those last 2 seed beads in there, I'm going to put the seed beads in and go through that Arcos and come out before the drop. That's going to complete the first go round of this little flower design. You can see how different it looks from the different colors too. What we're going to be doing now basically is getting in some extra seed beads to make it really look like it's going around in a circle. To put in the extra seed beads, we're going to want the extra seed beads to basically rise right along the edge of our Arcos bead. To do so and to basically conceal the thread a little bit, I am going to add in 1 15-0 and go from the middle hole of the Arcos to the top hole of the Arcos. And that's just going to tuck a little seed bead behind. When I'm coming out the top hole of the Arcos then, add in 3 15-0s and sew through the 2 15-0s that are already there. That's going to add just a tiny bit along the outer edge. If you want to, I'll show you the puffed effect. And actually maybe I'll do that since this one has 3. We can actually add in a 4th bead. So instead of 3, if we add in a 4th, I'll show you the effect that it gets. So there's 4 15-0s. If you get in the 4, it adds a little bit more of a rounded design rather than a straight design. I'll do that for this one since this one has 3, just to show you the difference towards the end of the pendant. When I come out the 2 seed beads, I'm going to take the needle and thread and go through that top hole of the cream or that champagne Arcos. I'm going to go through the teardrop and come out right before the Arcos bead. From there on goes a 15-0 and through the top hole of the Arcos right near it. Again, tuck that seed bead down inside just a little bit. And 3, or I'm sorry, we're going to do 4, that's right. 4 seed beads and then into those 2 there. When I'm going through those 2 at the same time, it's the easiest to go through the Arcos and the teardrop and come out. I kind of push the teardrop towards the middle to make sure that it stays point side up. Add a 15-0 and sew into the top hole of the mint Arcos. Spinning around them, you're just going to keep it in your hand, adding 4 of your 15s. Sew through the 2 that are there, through the Arcos. So you're basically sewing straight down in the line. Through that drop and not through the Arcos, just through the drop and out. Push that drop kind of towards the middle with your fingers, which will pull the thread to the outer edge. Add a 15-0 and sew through the top hole. So I'm going to continue this. I have this done on 3. I'm going to continue doing it on the last 3 little Arcos petals. The petals of my winter flower are now complete. I brought my thread and needle down the last Arcos and through the teardrop, and I'm coming right out there at the end. What I'm going to do now, while I'm on the outer edge before I get to the middle to add my teardrops in the middle, is I'm going to go ahead and do my bail. If you want to, you can even just add a jump ring. Like I said, these really aren't that heavy, and it's not super huge. I would wear it as an earring. And you can decide whether or not you want it as a pendant earring, or you could make a matching set. I'm going through the 15-0 that's already there and out the Arcos bead. Going through the top hole of the Arcos. Just like I would be getting ready to put in more seed beads, but I don't need any more seed beads because I'm already done with that seed bead rotation. When I'm coming out the end of the Arcos right there, I'm going to add some seed beads to make my bail. If you want to, you can even do this in a ladder stitch. For this one here, I just did it straight. For the ladder stitch, if you want, you're going to add 4 beads, or you can just do a straight loop. That's up to you. And with those 4 beads, I'm going to go back through my initial 2 beads. Oh, I have 5 beads on here. Let's get that one off. I'm going to go back through my initial 2 beads in a circle. So I have 4 beads and I'm sewing back through the 2. Give a nice tight pull, and that'll set 2 on top of one another. Sew through the second set of 2, and we're going to come out the side there. When I come out the side here, add 2 more beads on. Sew through the 2 that you're coming out of in the opposite side. So the thread's coming out the right, I add 2 beads, my needle goes in on the left-hand side and comes out the right. Go back through the 2 that you already just added and add 2 more. So you can see that ladder effect going on. Basically making the rungs of a ladder. Adding the 2 beads, just spinning around. 2 beads go on. So back through the 2 you're coming out of, and then through the 2 that you just added. You're going to make a couple rows of these so we can lay them out, and then we'll connect it to the end of the Arcos bead. So I have 9 rows of my ladder stitch on. If you want to just do a straight loop, you can do about 11 beads and still follow on in the same method. Once I have the 9 beads on, or the 9 rows of my ladder on, I'm going to bring my thread and needle back down, and I'm going to go behind the pendant. And you can see the front and the back based on where the teardrops are. And I'm going to sew through those first 2 beads that were in my ladder stitch again. Folding that over, you can see it makes a little round loop. And I'm sewing through that first 2 again. I'm then going to sew through the last 2 that I just added that my thread was coming out of. And that's going to loop that together. It might get a little tight because it's 15 O's, but once you give a nice tight pull, that's going to get most of that thread, most of that thread out of the way. When we have that nice tight pull then and the thread is out of the way, what we're going to do is connect the bail section to the opposite side of the Arcos. So I have my little bail section here. It's basically free hanging because it's hanging off the side of the Arcos. I want to connect it to the opposite side of the Arcos here and make it so that when I turn it to the front, it sits nice and right on top. To do so, I want to add in 4 15-0 seed beads and go through the top hole of that Arcos bead that my thread was coming out of. It's going to give it have a little rounded edge here. And then when you look at it, and kind of bring it in together here, I'm going to sew through the 15-0 right before the bail and then the bail one more time. And when you look at it then, your little flower will hang right like that. If you like the look of the decorated edge too, you can actually decorate the edge of the rest of the flowers. I rather like it to stay open. I like that spiky look that it has going on. To get back to the middle now, we'll go back through those 4 beads that we just added, which shaped out the Arcos. We're going to go down then through the 15 right before the teardrop. Poke your needle out. And basically, we're just getting our needle back to the middle here. Go through the teardrop. You can see I'm spinning it around in my hand. Through the Arcos bead. And I'm going to come out the cream Arcos bead here and snake through from the outer hole to the center hole. Come out the center hole then. and I'm also going through the 15-0 before the seed bead. So I'm just literally kind of going back and forth and down. Go ahead through that first hole of the mint Arcos after that seed bead. And you can either come out, or if your needle angle will work, you can go then straight through the center hole of the next cream Arcos, or even because of the color of the thread, you can skip from that first hole there down to the center hole of the Arcos right below it. You really won't see the thread by the time we add in the seed beads. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add in some seed beads. To add in our seed beads, we're going to be adding them basically in groups of 2 Arcos. So we're going to go from one Arcos over top of one to the next. And we are going to add in 7 seed beads at a time. So I have my 7 15-0s that I'm picking up with my thread and needle. Letting them drop down next to the project. I'm going to skip over the next Arcos in line and go through the next one. Those seed beads then are just going to kind of hang out right on top of the Arcos. Again, 7 seed beads go on. Skip over the next Arcos and on to the next. Because it's a grouping of 6, we'll end up with 3 groups of these extra little seed beads. Put on the last 7 beads. Go through the first Arcos bead that your thread was coming out of and that you ended your seed beads on. Wiggling it through there. And at the same time now, take your needle and thread up through the seed beads that you added, coming out of seed bead number 4, which is going to be basically the peak of those seed beads. When you're out seed bead number 4, grab a teardrop and add it onto your needle. Go over to the next grouping of seed beads, count up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Naturally, usually it'll be right there at the point anyway. Grab onto that, kind of push that teardrop so it's facing downward. Grab another teardrop, count over 1, 2, 3, and 4. Over to the next grouping of seed beads. And this is where I said you could put a crystal in the middle if you want, or a couple crystals. The middle is kind of wide open that you can do what you want. I liked the teardrop look, which kind of continued the flower look. Next one goes on, last teardrop, and connect over to the bead on the next grouping. That's bead number 4 that your thread and needle are already coming out of. Take your thread and needle, force all of those teardrops up and out, and give a nice tight pull, and that's going to pull them in right like that, nice and together. To tighten them and make sure that they stay up, you're going to sew through all of those bead number 4s, as well as that teardrop one more time. So I'm going around basically that inner circle. If it gets tight, you can take your pliers, do a little wiggling, and it'll usually pull right through. And as you're going around, before you tighten it, make sure that all those teardrops want to stay up. Because when we tighten it and we tie the knots, they're going to be stuck. So we'll push that guy up. I'm going to continue then sewing around. Going through my teardrops and my 15. Once you go around the complete circle, now all we're going to do is end our threads. So we have that starter thread right there in the back, and I'm coming out in the middle basically of my little drops of my winter flower. Come down the side through 3 of the seed beads after that middle 4th. take your needle towards the back of the project, and you'll be able to see where you need to get to. So I'm literally just going to sew through each of my Arcos bead through that center hole till my threads are coming out next to one another. Once your threads are coming out at the same location, you can take off that stop bead, pulling it out, take those 2 thread ends and just tie them together. I like to do square knots right over left and then left over right. I switch hands, so first I'll hold the short thread with my left hand and then I'll hold it with right. Switch again, left then right. It's going to accomplish the same thing as a square knot. After you have your square knot, you can grab your super glue glue if you want. A little dab of glue on that knot. Let it dry for a couple seconds, taking it off the mat to make sure that it doesn't stick to the mat. As it's drying, I'll take my cord cutter here, burn down my thread ends, and cinch them down close to the project. After that, your little fun flower here is done. So the winter flower, you can see kind of the difference of kind of how it's more archy versus the straight lines, adding the 3 versus the 4 seed beads there at the end. Again, it's really not that large. You could make it into a pair of earrings. I really love how the different colors make them look completely different. The top here, again, like I said, if you want to, you could go around the outer edge and decorate the outer edge of the flower. If you choose not to decorate the outer edge, which would just be coming out here on this outside and going down back into that little seed bead teardrop rotation back out to the top and around. So just going around basically the whole entire outside. You could do that, but I actually like the simplicity of the fun shape here that you're getting with this fun little winter flower. You could also do a necklace of these, kind of linking them together as you go. You could link one and then the other, going in kind of to a V pendant shape. So have fun with this design. It's just something a little simple that was sitting, that we're kind of playing with, and really liked the way that the teardrop popped and the effect that you get from that as well. And I like, because it is simple, how much different the design looks. If you do need any of the materials to do this winter flower pendant, you can go back to the beginning of the video to the little drop down menu on the left hand side. If you're on a mobile, or if you'd rather see it listed out, you can go to the description underneath here and drop that down. As always, you can also subscribe to this YouTube channel. That way you get regular updates on different beads, like when the Arcos came out, as well as patterns that we do, like this one here, and updates from Potomac Bead Company about new products, what we have going on, and what we're launching as well. Again, if you do need any of the products, you can shop with me online at PotomacBeads.com. You can also stay connected with us, joining our Facebook page, and also checking out the Facebook group that we have for beading and jewelry making. Ask to become a member there and really share your design, share what you're making, and show us what you guys have going on as well. As always, thanks so much for watching, everybody, and have fun making this winter star flower.